I'm Irfan Hussain, and I am here with another video lecture regarding our program of TEFL and TESOL. We are going through our lectures of second language acquisition, and this is the third part of our series. In our first part, we discussed about behaviorism, about operant conditioning of P.F. Skinner. In second part, we discussed mentalism, innatism that was given by great Noam Chomsky. And today we are going to discuss about Krashen's monitor model, that is sometimes called input hypothesis. Regarding or in the matter of second language acquisition, Krashen's monitor model is considered to be the most important second language acquisition theory. Stephen Krashen is also a living legend like Chomsky. He was born in 1941. Presently he is professor of linguistics in University of California, and he presented his theory or hypothesis, that is a group of 5 hypotheses in fact, in 1970s and 1980s. As I told you that sometimes it is called input hypothesis because he concentrated, stressed on input of the language. What are these? These are the acquisition learning hypothesis, the monitor hypothesis, the natural order hypothesis, the input hypothesis, and the effective filter hypothesis. We'll discuss and try to understand all these 5 hypotheses one by one. The first one, the acquisition learning hypothesis. We already know what is acquisition and what is learning, and we're having a quick recap that acquisition is occurs mostly in childhood, and it occurs in natural environment, and the process is conducted subconscious, in subconscious, and unconsciously. We are not conscious about learning the language or acquiring the language. As children acquire language, you know, in your environment there are a lot of children, you know, that within 2-3 years they start speaking Urdu or Punjabi, whatever their language is, and they do not need any kind of teaching or lessons or classrooms for this. This is a natural process, and that is acquisition. What is the significance of teaching in that learning and acquisition? Krashen says that we should provide our students a natural environment, and more than learning, it should be like artificial acquisition, that he should be given that environment where student may speak English, may speak other language, whatever he is learning, and may have listening input as well for the language, like he may get that input in natural environment. So the stress is on natural environment of the second language. Monitor model, it is actually the monitoring of the process of language learning and acquisition. If a teacher is trying to give acquisition or learning to his or her students, he has to monitor the progress, to check the progress of the student, how much he is successful and what is the level of his learning and acquisition. That is called monitor model. And during that learning and acquisition, he also checks the errors. Teacher needs to check the errors, and off and on he has to correct his students. But there is a big obstacle sometimes when teacher keeps on correcting students again and again. It hampers, it creates a hurdle on the way of fluency. So there is a need to keep a keen balance between fluency and accuracy, that it should not be like that while trying to create accuracy you may hamper the fluency. So according to the modern linguist, fluency comes first and then you keep on make things correct, and then you work on accuracy, and rather students get their accuracies most of the time themselves. So there must be a good balance between fluency and accuracy. And then the natural order hypothesis. This is a predictable order, similar to native language learning. As in native language learning, for example, first of all, child learn nouns. Child start learning the names of the things, and he says only the names: chair, table, pencil, bread, and whatever the words are there in language. And then child starts forming 2-word sentences, and then child starts forming 3-word sentences, and then somewhere in between child adds the use of verb. So first he learns noun, then he comes to verb, and then he comes to auxiliaries. For example, in Urdu language, for example, I give that example. If I say, the child says pani, and on some later stage child starts saying pani pina, and then on later stage child says pani pina hai. So these are 3 stages, and this is the natural order. And what Krashen says, that while teaching a second language to the students, teachers should consider that natural order, and teacher should allow his or her students to move on the natural track of acquisition of language. What happens that we teach all the things simultaneously. At the same time we are teaching nouns to students, at the same time we are teaching verbs, adverb, adjectives, and auxiliaries, and it is not possible for, according to Krashen, it is not possible for a learner to acquire all these elements of language simultaneously. And what he says, the natural order of acquisition cannot be influenced by direct teaching of features that the learner is not yet ready to acquire. Learner hasn't acquired nouns, who is not ready to acquire a verb. Learner hasn't acquired verb, how he can acquire auxiliary verb? So this is the natural order. And what Krashen says, that when he is not ready to acquire the auxiliary verb, because he hasn't acquired learned the verb, so he will not learn auxiliary verb, whether we try or not. So natural order must be followed according to Krashen. Then input hypothesis is always equal to output, or output is always equal to input. Give input to get output. We know that in language there are 2 input skills, that are reading and listening, and 2 output skills, that are speaking and writing. The more you give listening practice to your student, the more they will speak. The more you give reading practice to their students, the more they will write. So he puts that stress on input, that an ample input should be given to the learners. And what he says, that this is always I plus 1. What is that I plus 1? I symbolizes the present level of the student. That presently he stands on level 5, and you should give him that input of level 6, so that he may go 1 step ahead. So what he says, that input should be 1 step plus to present situation, present level of the student. Then the effective filter hypothesis. What is that? That is a filter that actually sometimes filters the second language itself. That is a kind of shield in the mind of the learner that slows down the process of acquisition. It may be many factors. It may be mother tongue influence. It may be insufficient environment that is not sufficiently natural to the learner. It may be some emotional issue. It may be some motivational issue. It may be anything, and teacher need to address the problems of the students and to He needs to remove that shield that slows down the process of the second language learning, and teacher has to perform as we read lesson in second year, that why boys fail in college, that he needs to perform the duty of a doctor, of a physician, and he has to diagnose the problem of the learners, and he has to remove that problem. He has to remove that shield, he has to remove that filter, so that the learner may receive language direct, without any filtration, without any hurdle, and he can give that equally good output. And for this purpose, to create a welcoming environment further. This is a big problem. You say that in our environment, most of the times students are afraid of English language. They're not happy in English class. But teacher, it's a duty of the teacher, the part of teaching, that he has to create a kind of environment that students may feel pleasure in language classroom, in the classroom. Efficient in learning. So this is all for today. These are the 5 hypotheses of Krashen. If you have any question, you may ask me, and thanks for listening it, and see you next.